In this tutorial, we'll be making a very simple example of how you can get started with turn-based combat. At the end, you'll have a player and an enemy who alternate damaging each other. When one of them reaches 0 health, the game will notify you of which one was defeated. This video is not really going to go into detail about the code, although I will show it all on screen. This is mainly for showing you how you can start working within Unity. So let's get going. All right, I've got an empty Unity project here. I've actually already created a scripts folder and just an empty script here called turn-based combat. You can go to create and mono behavior script, or if you're in an older version of Unity, it'll say like create new C# script. Now let's create a 3D object. I'm going to create a sphere, and I'm going to name this player and then duplicate that, name the duplicated one enemy. And let's position these across from each other. We'll put the player at around -5, and then we'll position the enemy at +5, so they're on the opposite ends from each other. And then let's create just a floor of some kind for them. We'll do like a quad, just something basic. We'll name it floor, and then we'll need to angle its rotation 90 degrees on the x-axis to make it, oriented like a floor, and we'll scale it up to around 20. And let's move it down. I'm moving it down -0.5 or so that it doesn't intersect with my spheres. Now, this is all very gray and ugly looking. So if you click on your player or enemy object and open up their materials, you'll see it's just lit, which is just a generic ugly gray. So let's go create a new folder and we'll call it materials, so that we can, you guessed it, make some new materials. We'll go to create material. Let's call this one blue. That'll be for the player. And we'll go pick a blue color. Let's do something a little lighter than that. That looks better. And let's do the exact same thing. We'll make this one red, and that'll be for our enemy. And then once we've got those all set up the way we want, we'll go back to our game objects over here, set the blue one to the player, and the red one for the enemy. And boom, that's much nicer to look at, a lot clearer what we're looking at. Now we need to create some UI elements. So directly on the player, you can just right click UI, hit Text Mesh Pro, and that'll just appear beneath it. If this pops up, just go ahead and hit import TMP essentials. You don't need the examples and extras right now, so just close out of that. And this is where we're going to set up our health display. Now I don't want this to be screen space overlay. I want it to hover directly over my player and my enemy. So let's change that to world space. It's going to probably disappear. So we need to reset our transform to zeros. So set the X and the Y to 0. The text looks gigantic. So instead of changing the width and the height directly, let's go to scale and scale that down to 0.01. You can already see that's a much better size, and we'll just move it up. It's actually a little hard to see with our background there. So let's go to the text object itself, actually. And we're gonna, first of all, let's just center it that way, because then it'll be really precise. And then let's change the color to a dark gray or a black so that we can see that. And let's go back to the canvas and set that X position to 0. And now it is perfectly centered. And let's copy this. And actually, I'm gonna end up renaming things. So let's just do that first. Let's call this health. And let's call the text health text. And let's actually call that health canvas, just to be very clear about what we're looking at. Health canva. Let's call that canvas. And now let's copy it. And we will paste that underneath the enemy with keeping the local transform, and it, boom, is in exactly the same spot. Perfect. Love that. Okay. Now let's go to, let's fix this so that it's exactly at 1, because that's going to bug me being 1.02. We'll close that up, and actually let's go to the health text and just give it some temp display data. So we'll call this 10 out of 10, just so we get the we're looking at health here. This doesn't actually mean anything right now, but it's just so that we can visualize it better. Great, that looks really nice. Now let's open up our script, and I am just going to zip through this. So when I first open a new script, the first thing you want to do, in my opinion, it's good practice, is to type out in natural language. Just use comments. You can do a / and then start typing things, and write out for yourself the flow of what you want the script to do and try to be as specific and clear as you possibly can. We want to get ourselves to where we're really thinking like programmers. When we talk to people and we explain something like, oh, I have this idea and I want it to look like this and here's how it'll work, people are able to really infer things. We have imaginations, right? Computers can't do that. So whatever you tell them to do, they will do no more and no less than exactly that. So that's what I'm doing here, is just typing out kind of what I want it to do. Now, fast forwarding, I've typed out the code underneath those comments so it all corresponds with each other and you can see it just helps you keep focus. So we're serializing our fields and creating game objects for the player and the enemy. These are references for those game objects we created before. So we'll drag and drop them. I'm going to really zip through this. So if you're a total beginner and this is just really overwhelming, don't worry about it right now. Like, we will have other tutorials in the future that really explain in great detail what each thing is, what each step is. If you want a tutorial like that for this specific tutorial we're doing now about this basic turn-based combat, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to create something like that where I really go into detail and explain each concept clearly. But for now, you're welcome to just copy this text if you're not understanding it. If you have some coding experience, this should all be pretty easy to understand, as I'm just sort of highlighting step by step what the natural language is and then what the code is beneath that. But again, if you're a total beginner, don't worry about how fast this is. You're welcome to just copy the text as you see it. And in the future, we'll really get into more detail about what each of these things actually means. But the purpose of this tutorial is more so to focus on like how to set this up, familiarizing yourself with Unity and where different things are, and all that stuff. So as you can see right now, we're kind of going through like, what is the player attack method? And hey, if it's not the player's turn, we don't want them to be able to click a button and have it do something. So we're going to track whose turn it is. And if it's not the player's turn, don't let them do anything. So they can't just keep interrupting the enemy's turn. We're dealing damage here. We're going through and updating our UI. We're setting our attack button to when it should and shouldn't be interactable. Again, if this is all gibberish, don't worry. And if you're not a beginner and you understand what we're talking about here and what you're seeing on the screen, great. And I would encourage you to not copy along the code if you're not a beginner, and instead like do what I was doing at the very beginning of this sort of scripting segment, where imagine how you want this turn-based, scenario to work out. Type it out step by step and see if you can get it working on your own. And if you get lost or get stuck, maybe then come through and get inspiration from what you're seeing on the screen now about how I decided to do it. This is very simple. This would not work, for example, if you wanted, multiple people in your party who they each take turns amongst each other and multiple enemies all at once. Like, imagine sort of classic Final Fantasy where you've got a party of 3 and you're attacking a couple of enemies. Like, how do you juggle all of those different characters and their turns? It wouldn't work in the way that we're doing it here. This is very much like old school Pokemon sort of style turn-based, where it's my turn's over, it's your turn, back to my turn, and on we go until someone dies. So in here, you can see I've got a single move over time method that gives you, once again, very classic sort of old school Pokemon style of, there's no animations here outside of, we're just going to make our little sphere move forward a little bit when it attacks and move back, and whoever gets damaged is going to move back a little bit and then move, they'll return to their starting position. We're using lerps here to make it smooth. It's linear interpolation is what that's for. Once again, if you're brand new, it's going to sound like gibberish. If you're pretty experienced, you probably use lerps all the time. They're very handy. So we're just about at the bottom of it here. And here's where we set up our UI update. So whatever our player health currently is, we're going to update that display and show what it is out of our max health. So let's go back into Unity. We're going to create an empty game object, and we'll call this turn-based controller. And we'll drag in our turn-based combat script onto that game object. And you'll see here are all our references that we need to now drag on to that script. So we'll take our player object, drag it into where we wrote player, enemy onto enemy, And we need to drag our texts onto the various texts. So again, this is just a way for our script to understand which game object we're talking about when we say we want to do some sort of behavior. Now let's create a new canvas, and this one is actually going to be our player UI. It's going to be very simple. We're going to have a single button, and for this one, we actually will keep it as a screen space canvas. We want this one to just be always on the player screen. So we're going to scale it with the screen size. I like to set this to 1080p, so it'll be 1920 by 1080. And then let's create the actual UI button here. Button, Text Mesh Pro, there it is. And let's anchor this at the bottom of the screen and set that to 0, and it's getting cut off, so let's drag it up. Let's set it to around 100. As you can see, I like my nice round numbers. So let's go to the text and let's make this say attack. So when the player clicks this button, something should happen. We've already set that up in the script, so all we have to do now is click on the turn-based controller, grab the button, drag it onto that empty slot, and we should be good to go. We're going to press play and see what happens. Now, based on the script that I wrote, I'm going to hit this attack button. You're going to see the player moves forward and hits, the enemy's health goes down, and whoever gets hit gets shoved back a little and goes back into position. And then at the end, when someone goes to 0, we should see that display in our console. And there you go. Enemy defeated. The enemy reached 0. We show that to the player. So there you have it. This simple foundation is actually how I began my own game, Novath, seen here. At the time of this upload, you can wishlist the game on Steam. It's launching for $10. I'll leave a link in the description, so please check that out as another way to support me and the continuation of this channel. Thanks so much to everyone who supports the channel through Patreon. Your contributions mean the world to me and allow me to continue doing this. Lastly, I've also published a book that you can purchase as well. It's the first in an epic fantasy series following a large cast of complex characters, so if that interests you, it's another great way to support the channel. There's a link in the description for that as well. If you have any feedback or questions for future tutorials, please leave a comment and let me know what you hope to see going forward. Thanks. I'll talk to you next time.